few years back, I was living in a peaceful apartment complex that was tucked away on the outskirts of a small town. The days were serene, replete with the contagious laughing of kids and consoling conversations among neighbors. However, the evenings told a different tale. I didn't have a fear of the dark in my early 20s only because I was a woman. I was used to living alone. However, this location was distinct. As night fell, an odd pattern began to emerge. I could hear soft murmurs coming from my bedroom window. On certain evenings, I explained it away as the wind or even far-off sounds coming from a radio. But as the days stretched into weeks, I found it increasingly difficult to shake the feeling that these murmurs were directed toward me. One night, more out of annoyance than bravery, I made the decision to take on this enigma. I waited by my window, listening carefully for that sound I knew so well. I quickly opened the curtains as soon as the whispering started, partly expecting to see a cunning neighbor in action. Rather, my eyes fell onto a lone, almost discernible figure standing close to the woods on my apartment's perimeter. The apparition beckoned me with a wave. Curiosity and fear fused within me. I was not going outside in any way. However, for some reason I kept nodding along as though my ideas had no influence over what I did. Then, with my adrenaline pounding, I found myself scaling the bedroom window. How did I get there? My gaze darted back toward the wood line as soon as my feet touched the earth. The figure has vanished. Instead, there was a gap in the forest, a gap I had never observed. I started to move, pulled toward that enigmatic clearing. The volume of the night sounds was higher than I had recalled. Each insect chirp and leaf rustle sent a chill down my spine. I tried to console myself by speculating that perhaps I had misread the circumstances. Perhaps there was an easy way to explain everything. I started to feel uneasy as I ventured farther into the shadows. I could feel eyes on me, and the cold weight of that observation was depressing. The sound of rustling leaves and eerie, reverberating murmurs made the woods seem to come to life. My heart raced, and I was convinced that I was being led into a trap. I eventually came to a clearing where I saw something that still bothers me. A modest, crudely constructed camp with only natural materials, a log obviously intended for seating, and a bed of leaves stacked and compressed to resemble bedding were all present. Additionally, a bag. A tiny black duffel bag was perched next to the stump. I happened to catch the edge of what looked like a photograph poking out from under the duffel bag, as if things weren't weird enough already. I noticed the weight of the bag when I lifted it. It was an image, a photo of myself. I dropped the bag and realized it was open only now. The contents were terrifying. Duct tape, knots with a Zipmore pictures. It was crammed with pictures. Pictures I took in that flat. Pictures of me living, eating, and changing. Every picture was shot from the exterior of the flat, looking through the window and the tiny opening in the almost closed curtain. All save one. I took the picture that caught my attention the most. It was obviously not the same. It was a picture of me dozing off. However, there was not a single window or curtain crack in this picture. I took this specific picture just a few feet away from my lie, from within my sleeping quarters. I let go of the pictures, fear taking hold of me as I recognized the consequences. I had been observed by someone, from the house, from the woods, even from my own chamber. Once an unsettling background sound, the whispers took on the sound of a menacing warning. I was momentarily immobilized by fear, wondering where that figure had disappeared. But I was driven back toward the apartment by the need to wake up from this nightmare. Every shadow felt alive, every wind ruffle threatening as I rushed. Breathing sharply, I burst through my window and locked it behind me. Was I visible to him outside? My phone was missing. Where was it? Why did I not own a firearm? My mind was a maelstrom of unanswered questions at that precise time. One thing was certain, though. I had to leave that place immediately. Haunted, I returned to live with my mother. I learned not to believe whispers in the dark and kept my curtains completely closed after that night. Up until the noises started, living in the peaceful seclusion of my flat was a reassuring habit. The normal noises of footsteps, dishes clattering, and the occasional giggle could be heard from across the hall as my neighbor came and went. I didn't give it much thought because I saw it as a small annoyance of living in the same building as other people. However, the sounds suddenly became unsettling. A gentle thud echoed through the walls as I reclined on my couch one evening. I initially assumed it was just a dropped object, nothing unusual, but the sounds became more weird the next night. Whispers that I was unable to understand, like voices carried by the wind. Between a nagging feeling of uneasiness and interest, I struggled to form words. The murmurs danced just outside my comprehension, dying off if I concentrated too much. I attempted to dismiss it, telling myself that sounds only traveled in strange ways via thin walls. The sounds developed into a bizarre symphony as the days went by. The air was filled with muffled cries, faint laughter, and even the jingle of wind chimes. I had the impression that I could hear tidbits of a life that was happening right outside my flat. My curiosity became an obsession as I found myself hunching over the door for hours on end, trying to hear every noise. The longer I listened, the more I came to understand that the noises were inexplicable. There was rustling I couldn't place to the beat of any commonplace activity. Doors appeared to open and close by themselves, as though there was a living force within the walls. Though our chance meeting was brief, it had a lasting influence on me. One evening as I went outside to get my mail, she came and gracefully unlocked her apartment door, drawing my attention. She looked amazing, having somewhat enigmatic eyes. She smiled at me as our eyes locked, a brief but meaningful exchange that left me wondering. But one night, every feeling of normalcy was broken. Guttural yells and powerful thuds replaced the soft murmurs that reverberated from across the corridor. My heart tightened with fear as I tried to envisage the worst, seeing her imprisoned in a vicious fight. My hesitancy was replaced by desperation, and I hurried to knock urgently on her door. There was no reply. I cried out and banged on the door in a panic, my voice revealing my anxiety. I heard silence in return, as if there was no one living in the apartment. I felt the weight of fear pressing down on my chest while I considered what to do. I was so driven to make sure she was safe that I ignored prudence and pounded on the door as hard as I could. Still no response. My heart pounding, I reached for the doorknob and turned to see it was unlocked. The door opened to show an apartment completely dark, and my breath hitched. My fingers groped for the light switch, and I flinched in dread when the room filled with light. The flat was deserted. Nothing existed. Not a woman, not furniture, nothing. A shiver of uncertainty rushed down my spine. The parts that had formerly fit together so perfectly suddenly shifted, and uncertainty bit into my beliefs. Were the sounds, whispers, cries, that I believed I heard only the noises produced by my racing thoughts? Had I really seen the mysterious neighbor, or was she just figment of my hysterical fantasy? The flat was empty, and as I glanced at it, reality warped and became hazy. The possibility that I might have wandered into the unknown gripped tighter, suggesting that my curiosity had misled me. The reality continued to be evasive, like a shadow inside a shadow. The mystery itself started to feel as unnerving as the possibility that my own perceptions had deceived me. The empty flat was evidence of the inexplicable, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had stepped on something forbidden, something I was never supposed to witness. I stood in front of my new apartment door with my key in hand, and the air was heavy with expectation. I had never lived alone before outside of the comfortable walls of my childhood home. I was excited by the prospect of freedom and independence. However, an odd feeling of discomfort began to eat at the edges of my enjoyment. The tiny yet comfortable flat had low lighting that created shadows everywhere. The creaking floorboards and walls that seemed to be whispering tales of past occupants added to the creepy ambiance. I put my discomfort aside as being just jitters from everything being so unfamiliar and started unpacking my things. Night fell quickly, and a cold wind crept through the room. I tried to dismiss the feeling that someone or something was watching me as I settled into the bed and pulled the blankets closer about me. I convinced myself that it was all just figments of my hyperactive mind. a symptom of my anxiety over living alone. I was about to close my eyes and will myself to sleep when I heard a faint rustle. I strained to listen, my heart skipping a beat, thinking it was the wind outside. However, I heard it once more distinct this time, as though there was movement within the space. My eyes snapped awake, taking in the pitch black. The furniture's shapes were visible as the moonlight permeated the draperies. Nothing appeared to be out of place. Nevertheless, a chill went down my back and I grabbed the light from the nightstand, filling the room with a cozy warmth. I sighed with relief and scolded myself for being so unrealistic. I saw it just as I was going to switch off the lamp and return to sleep. A quick shadow darted across the wall, barely visible to me. I couldn't take my eyes off the area as my heart raced and I froze. I took a big breath and made myself get out of bed. When I got closer to the wall where the shadow had been, the floor felt chilly under my feet. I felt my fingertips over the paint and saw nothing out of the ordinary. The silence permeated the room as though the air itself was holding its breath. I went back to bed, but sleep would not come. My spine tingled at every creak in the floor and every far-off sound. I grabbed for my phone, thinking maybe I could call a friend or relative to help me relax, but the signal was spotty in this strange environment. I was surrounded by the unknown and totally alone. An uneasy feeling kept growing as I laid there. The place seemed to be infused with a sinister force. As soon as I turned to look out the window, my breath stuck in my throat. There was a figure in the moonlight standing there, someone who has no right to be there. I was still as I gazed at the silhouette, my heart pounding. The figure appeared to be poised in midair, swaying softly. With a wave of panic coursing through me, I reached for the lamp, and it was dead. As the room fell dark, I scrambled to find my phone and made a desperate attempt to call for assistance. The apparition shifted and came toward me with a disconcerting elegance. I managed to press the call button with trembling fingers, and the room echoed with the sound of the dial tone. The figure approached, shadows still obscuring its face. I had a tangible sense of fear that stopped me cold. "Help me!" Finally, I choked out, my voice trembling. The laughing of the apparition reverberated across the room, seeming to come from every angle. The apparition vanished into thin air in the same instant that it had appeared, leaving me shaking and alone in the dark. The phone caller kept calling my name, but I was too frightened to answer. I could not believe what I had just seen. My mind was racing with terror and uncertainty. I waited for the first rays of dawn, and the night stretched on, with each second feeling like an eternity. Upon the eventual peak of daylight through the curtains, I experienced a sense of relief. Warm light filled the apartment, and the shadows lost their ominous secrets. I realized that at some point during the night the call had ended, and I grabbed the phone tightly. With wobbly legs, I staggered out of bed and made my way to the wall where the figure had been. Nothing existed there, not even a hint of it. Was everything a delusional thought? A nightmare brought on by my unease in my new environment? I couldn't get the memories of that terrifying night out of my head, so I spent the following several days in a fog. I wondered if moving and living alone had worn me out mentally, and I started to doubt my own sanity. But a persistent doubt lingered in the background, the uncertainty that what I'd gone through was genuine. I never stayed in that apartment for another night. I realized that I couldn't stay in a location with such dark secrets, as the terror had been too ingrained in my mind. The twisted apparition that had been haunting my dreams and the creepy atmosphere were gone as I got away as swiftly as possible. I still find it hard to express what I saw that evening. Was it a reflection of my own anxieties, a figment of my feverish imagination, or was there really something evil hiding in that apartment's shadows? The experience lingers with me, a persistent reminder that darkness may sometimes conceal more than simply a lack of light. It contains unspeakable horrors that have the power to distort our sense of reality.